Hi, so my name's Austin. Many of you know me from answering questions on the Polymer Slack channel as A Murdoch. Today I'm going to talk briefly about deploying a Polymer 2 application to an S3 bucket, using it as the sole purpose of deploying your website. I'm not going to cover everything that's going to be needed in order to make a production website. This is mostly focused on getting it out there and getting something stable that you can start testing against. A little bit of setup. I went ahead and created a bucket and uploaded the necessary files to ensure that we're not having to wait for that during the stream. I also went ahead and created a Polymer 2 project. So for this Polymer 2 project, all I did here was downloaded the latest version of the Polymer CLI and ran the Polymer init command, and then chose the Polymer 2 starter kit. As that built out, it went ahead and gave me this PolymerJS file. I'll go more into depth into tweaking this PolymerJS in some of my later videos. But the thing we need to know here is actually this preset ES5 bundled. That's going to give us our best option for cross-browser compatibility until we get some more support for ES6 across all browsers. In order to run this build, you just run the Polymer build command, and it will go ahead and dump out this build folder with a folder for each of your builds inside of it. I already run this, and I have these files pulled up here, so you can just hit build and then ES5 bundled, and these are the files that I've already deployed to our S3 bucket. So if we hop back over to Amazon, I'm going to go ahead and create another bucket just to show you the process I went through for creating and deploying the original bucket. Just give it a name, region. You can set this to whatever you want. This is the nearest region to me, so that's what defaults to. I'm not going to change it. I don't recommend changing it. The process for handling your duplication of your code across multiple regions is actually better dealt with CloudFront. And I may go into that one in another video later as well. But for this, we're just wanting to get it out there on a single zone using S3. So we're just going to choose the nearest one. If you were dealing with production websites or an actual dev instance or staging instance, you might want to go ahead and set up versioning and tagging and even object level logging. Server access logging might be useful, but since we're dealing with a server single page application deployed just to this instance, it's probably not going to be much use for us. So I'm not actually going to set any of these now. We will have to go into that section later whenever we get the rest of the options after the bucket's been created. As far as permissions goes, we just need myself as the sole owner and no one else, and then everything else locked down. Last page is just a review, so I'm going to go ahead and create that bucket. In here I'm going to open it up. This is the process I went through for uploading the files. You just choose them all. You can go ahead and select them all here, drag and drop them into here. The reason I wanted to bring this up is because on this section, this is going to be an important setting you have to go through. And this is going to be to grant public read access to all these objects. This is important because we are deploying it as a website, which means that all of the users that want to hit our website, which are going to be public users, are going to need to be able to have access to this. Since the only portions of this bucket or the entire bucket's available, but since the only assets in this bucket are actually what we're deploying to our web server, or would be a web server, is just the build assets, we're going to go ahead and mark the entire thing as available with write access. You can go in and change these per object if you want. In this case, we don't have a reason to. I'm not going to set anything else for the properties. Sorry about that. My Google Home kicked on. Now that we've got a bucket created, that puts us in the case where this other bucket I had was. If we were to try and use this now, we wouldn't be able to host anything or view anything from our website. So we're going to go ahead and enable static website hosting. As you can see now, I'm going to go ahead and open up this link. And it's just going to wait for a while and then fail. Slowly wait for a while, then fail. We're going to hop back over here though. The important, here it is, 404 not found. I've actually hit this link before, so it still has my icon from it. But now we're going to go ahead and enable it. We need to set it to index.html. This is going to allow us to use this as a static website. So that's going to handle the majority of the workload that we have to go through here, which is going to allow us to serve it as a normal application. If you're running off of a foldered structured, so non-single page application, this is really all you need to do to get your assets out there. As we'll see though, if you hit one of these routes coming in from the root, it works fine. But if you refresh on one of these routes, it's going to try and navigate you as if this route was actually a folder on your server. That's an issue for us. So in order to address that, we're going to go ahead and set up our error page to also point to the index.html. This can take a little bit to propagate. I've seen it usually takes a minute or two if it'll let you save. But the concept that's going on here is the browser by default and the server by default will see this and assume it's a folder structure and try and hit the index.html within that folder structure. But obviously, since that's not actually a folder structure for us, it blatantly doesn't exist. And that's why we're having the issue of this 404. Once our changes deploy, if it'll accept them, there it goes. I'll show you how that's handled in a second. Once it goes live. In the meantime, though, I wanted to point briefly on the CORS configuration. So for your dev instance and basic configurations that you want to be able to hit from like localhost and stuff, you're going to want to allow all origins. This is the default configuration. Obviously not the configuration you want whenever you have it in production, for example. You can just easily go through here and change the CORS configuration to whatever your setup requires past the dev instance. You can even lock down your dev instances if you want. This is actually just for hosting the static assets, so your local instance isn't going to be hitting this deployment unless you're, for example, doing a redirect for your proxies. We're simply just setting up a standalone single page application here, so I'm going to go ahead and leave it as defaults, but realistically we could lock this down just to this bucket so nothing else could access it if we wanted. So if we hop over here now and we try and hit one of these routes and refresh, after it takes a second, it'll be able to redirect back to this original route. There we go. So it's done loading now, and you can see that it was able to refresh on the route that it had previously failed to load. This is handled by the error redirection to the index.html. This isn't anything Polymer specific. This is pretty much how you're going to handle all single page applications that get deployed on an S3 bucket. The other alternative to this is if you want to use hashbang routing. I personally prefer not to use it, but again, some people like it, some people don't. The next steps after this would be to go ahead and configure CORS if needed and set up your domains to match the servers that you're hosting from. I'm not going to go into that here. It's pretty straightforward, and it's also kind of specific to whoever your DNS provider is. Lately I've been using domains.google or domains through Google, but I have used other ones like GoDaddy before to do deployments. Yeah, so this is pretty much the summary of it. I wanted to keep it nice and short. I've done live streams in the past, but it's usually long, tedious coding sessions. So I'm going to try and take videos of those moving forward and compact them down to the relevant things and focus these live streams more on specific concepts that are coming up. So if you guys have any questions or recommendations for streams in the future, I've got one planned out every Saturday for this month. I'll probably be posting that at some point. If you've got a topic you want covered, feel free to hit me up on the Polymer Slack at a Murdoch, or just post a comment on the video. Thanks, guys.